Hello YouTube, Dave here again. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the Pathfinder 2nd Edition Book of the Dead. This is one of the newest books to come out for Pathfinder 2e and is one that I've personally been looking really forward to since it was announced a while back. Before I get into the review portion of this video, I do want to state, just for the record, that this book was sent to me by Paizo for the purposes of doing this review. However, as is always the case, they are not scripting the video or influencing it in any way, shape, or form. They're not pre-screening it, and the opinions that I express in this video are 100% completely and totally my own. One of the first things that I was really impressed by or really happy with was just the cover art of the book. I do love the Pathfinder art style. And, you know, sort of like the dark green. It's one of my favorite colors. Like, I think dark green is probably my second favorite color after purple. So I was really happy to see just a book with, you know, like the spine that has sort of that coloration to it. This retails for $49.99 US. The Canadian price is, I think, around 60 like $59.99 to $64.99 plus tax, depending on where you are. So the first thing that really impressed me with this book is just the overall presentation of it. And that's something that I think that Paizo has done an amazing job with, especially with these supplementary books like Secrets of Magic and the like the Gears book, and the Book of the Dead is certainly no exception. So when you take a look inside, each of the pages has this sort of like border going around the edges, and it looks awesome. You have what almost looks like temple steps here, or pews in sort of a church or some sort of setting here. You've got like the statue with the brazier. You've got skulls in the sconces up on the walls. It just looks really, really awesome overall. And you can sort of see again more skulls on the outsides of the pages as well. Just a really, really cool appearance to the book. And again, some really fantastic artwork that we have in here as well. Now, one of the other things that I really love about this book is just the beginning section here is really, really great, especially when we get to the mysteries of unlife. Now, one of the things that I was really impressed with when it came to the Secrets of Magic book was the fact that they actually had what almost looked like textbook or scholars' journal entries going over the different types of magic. And they basically reproduced this here with a scholar who is probably a little too obsessed with undeath, just sort of musing over certain topics like the nature of undeath, the biology of undead, some of the cool stuff that, you know, he kind of determines is the fact that negative energy is very much the same as positive energy in terms of it being this animating force, and the way that negative energy requires the disruption of positive energy to sort of help sustain itself. So there's this theory that the writer of this section sort of puts forth, where he discusses the fact that like certain undead that have been created for more benevolent tasks, like farming or mining or things along those lines, typically don't last as long before deteriorating and falling apart as undead that are there to guard or attack living creatures that try to trespass on the property, sort of thing. So it's kind of a cool idea. There's also a real obsession with trying to study some relics from other cultures that are sent to trap spirits of potentially undead, and even like just this really clinical way of looking at it, and mentioning that he had sent one of his proteges, I guess you could say, to try to gain one of these relics, and has yet to return. And instead of being concerned, he's more curious as to whether he'll return at all, or if he'll return in a state other than that of the living. So it was just a really, really cool section, and just a really great read. And it was something that it was really captivating, and it kind of drew me in right from the very beginning here. We've also got some player character options here. There's actually quite a few of them in the book, and I'm not going to focus on these too much, but the first section here is kind of what I would expect from a book like this. A lot of like backgrounds, although there are some ones that I wasn't really expecting, like a grave robber or a necromancer's apprentice, things like that. But there's some really cool backgrounds that you get here as well. But in addition, some cool items like bottled sunlight for certain types of undead, The Celestial Peachwood Sword. So I guess there's this really rare, like ancient peachwood from peach trees that have been sanctified that can be used as weapons against the undead. Just some really cool stuff here. But then we get into the actual like character options in terms of specifically like archetypes that you can play. And these are sort of the ones that you kind of, like I said, you would expect to be in this book, and the ones that I was expecting from the kind of the get-go. So you have the Exorcist, who is sort of there to stop hauntings or ghostly possessions. You have the Hallowed Necromancer. Now this one's actually, again, really kind of interesting to me because necromancy is used for both things like the harm spell as well as the heal spell. So the Hallowed Necromancer is sort of the antithesis of what we think of as the stereotypical, evil, undead-centric necromancer. This is one that uses necromancy more for, the good of people, for healing and for other things along those lines. Just, again, just a really interesting take on necromancy, and I thought that was actually really cool to see. Then we got the Soul Warden and like the Undead Slayer. So again, sort of your more typical things that you would expect here. But Chapter 2, this is one that actually really surprised me here because we have some, again, you got some more of these like journal entries that are kind of scattered throughout, which is awesome from a presentation standpoint. But you also have some archetypes for player characters to play that are more, we'll say, undead friendly, as well as just some forms of undead that you can actually play, which is awesome. So we got the Reanimator archetype here, which again, that one seems pretty self-explanatory. You can have an undead eidolon for the summoner, as well as undead animal companions and mounts and familiars and all that stuff, which is really, really cool. You got the Undead Master, which is sort of able to command lesser undead. I also have to say, I kind of love the spectral like wiener dog there. That's just really, I don't know, that's kind of cute. The Deities of Undeath, again, a really cool section. We got Orcus, we have Charon, this guy, Kabiri. The fact that it's like the skull, and at first I thought that was brains, but when I look closer at it, it's actually just a skull filled with maggots. And of course, Urgathoa, or I'm bad at pronouncing these things, but sort of like one of the main undead deities in Pathfinder. And then we get to this section here, the Playing Undead. And this was something that I was really kind of surprised by, and I absolutely am 100% on board with it. And I kind of love it. So you actually get the ability to choose several types of undead that you can play as. Most of them are archetypes. So these are sort of, if you're not familiar with Pathfinder 2nd Edition, archetypes are sort of your answer to multiclassing. So traditional multiclassing doesn't exist in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, which is a fact that I love because I hate how multiclassing gets abused in other systems. But what you do is you take a feat at starting at 2nd level or any level that you gain feats thereafter, where you can actually take on like the archetype, which gives you minor access to certain abilities if they're class ones, or some other features, again, that resemble sort of the undead that these are based off of. When you take a dedication feat, you cannot take another type of dedication feat until you've taken 2 other feats from the first thing that you took a dedication feat to. So if you wanted to become like the ghost here, and basically with the ghost dedication, it means that you've died and you've come back as a ghost. You couldn't take something else like a class, multi-class archetype feat until you've taken at least 2 from the different lists here that we have. And there's some cool stuff here. One of my favorites has to be Ghostly Grasp, which actually allows you to physically manipulate objects using your athletics and strength score, where ordinarily ghosts are unable to really directly affect corporeal objects. So it's just, again, kind of a cool concept. And if you wanted to play a ghost in a campaign, or if your character dies and you have unfinished business, then you can actually take one of these archetype feats and come back as that, which is really awesome in my opinion. You've also got the Ghoul one here. The Ghoul one is also really cool because they have like the consumed flesh ability. And if they use it and they devour something, they become satiated. And several of these other feats that they can take, like Grave Strength, Feverish Enzymes, or Swift Leap, like things like this, will have either greater effects or will require you to be satiated before you can actually benefit from the feat. So again, it just sort of ties in with the fact that ghouls are this like ravenously hungry undead that constantly, tries to devour the flesh of the living or the very, very, very recently deceased. So it's really cool that we've got that here as well. The Lich, of course, just a classic here. They have the Soul Cage, which is the new version of what the Lich creates to house their soul and to eventually reform their body. And they can actually, if they can actually use it as a sort of like the bonded item that mages can use to drain to actually cast an extra spell, so they can actually use their soul cage for that if they want to. They can also take a feat that allows them to sort of regain or recorporate their body faster than they normally would. So again, liches are some of my favorites. I absolutely love it. And yeah, you can play it as a player character. The downside is, of course, for game balance purposes, this is a 12 level feat to gain the Lich dedication. So you have to be a minimum of 12 before you can actually become a Lich in the game. Most of the other ones are usually like second level. Like for example, the mummy dedication is at second level as well. Then we've got the skeleton. Now this one is actually really cool because it's not a dedication feat. It's not like an archetype that you play. It is actually an ancestry, and it's the only ancestry in the book here. And the concept is that someone of strong will and personality, basically like a hero type or adventurer type, has been killed and they've been brought back as a skeleton, but they're not your conventional mindless skeleton. They do take a hit to their intelligence, but they still retain memories and their personalities and things like that. And I think there's a version here where you can actually come back. You can like rejuvenate so many times and sort of come back from being destroyed. But each time you do, you lose an additional like memory that was cherished by you in your former life. And there's even one where you can come back using things like Raise Dead or Resurrection, but you aren't actually brought back as a living creature. You're brought back as a skeleton. You put some of your essence essentially into an item which is used as the focus for the spell, but you come back sort of as the skeleton version. Like I said, you lose a portion of your memories and a little bit of your personality and humanity, which is kind of cool. Then we got vampires. The zombie is also kind of cool. I like the ankle biter zombie. I gotta be honest. I think that's pretty cool. Oh, with the skeletons as well, there are different, I should mention there are different heritages, and they're basically like just the different types of creatures that you might have originally been. So like fodder skeleton, they're sort of smaller, the fodder skeletons are kind of like normal ones that can move faster than a regular skeleton. Combat skeletons are like gnomes, goblins, halflings, so they would be small sized. Then you got the sturdy skeletons, which are like dwarves or half-orcs, and then the monstrous skeletons, which could be something else. It's just, I don't know, it's just a really, really cool concept. You can take the Bone Mistle feat, where you can actually pull one of your ribs out and use it as a ranged weapon. There's just a lot of cool stuff that you can do with the skeleton. And just overall, it's a really cool concept. For the ghost stories, this gives you some ideas, concepts for writing things like ghost stories, hauntings, things like that you can use to sort of spice up your campaign, different undead-related hazards that you might have to deal with. And then we've also got just some more information on creating some undead here. Now, what I like about this is they're essentially templates that you can apply to other creatures to turn them into undead. And again, templates I think are a great thing in RPGs, and I'm glad to see them being used here. So for example, if you wanted to make something a mummy, it gives you kind of the adjustments that you would make to it. So you give it like the undead traits, you give it certain immunities, but it also gains a weakness to fire based on the level of the creature. So if it's level 3 or lower, it gains weakness 3 to fire. If it's level 14 or higher, it gains weakness 15 to fire. So just whenever it takes damage from that source, it would take that much more, is sort of essentially how that works. But again, really, really cool stuff. And then we get into, obviously, the brand new monsters. The beheaded, these things are pretty nasty. This year, I think it was like the Varagul in other systems. I'm not going to try to pronounce that. But yeah, it's just a really cool... I've always liked this creature, especially the fact that you can transform a living victim into one of these, and basically the head just rips itself off of the body, and it's pretty gnarly. There's a lot of gnarly stuff that we've got in here. Got like the Undead Gambler, which is interesting. You've got sort of the Cadaverous Rake, which is kind of a swashbuckler type. It does actually have an ability where it can parry you or riposte, where it actually will give you sort of like a one-liner back, which is really, really cool. Again, there's just some awesome stuff in here. So we're just going to, like I said, flip through here. So here we've got the Dravaka, and these are like the Nightwings and Nightwalkers from other systems, but man, these things look amazing, especially like the Nightwing. I have to say, it's my favorite version of that creature. I've seen other versions of like the Nightwalkers or Nightwings, and they're basically just this like shadowy void of a creature. Like it takes the form of something, but there's no real details to it. But this looks absolutely incredible. The Nightwalker looks awesome. The Nightcrawler, they even have the Night Wave, which is sort of like the undead shark version. Just so freaking cool, in my opinion. Some really awesome monsters here. We got the Death Coach, the Deathless Acolytes. Yeah, again, just like I said, some really cool stuff here. The Fiddling Bones, the Gallow Dead, the Geist. That's actually pretty cool. So this thing here, the Goldadako, I think that's like the undead Cyclops, which is really cool. And then, you know, sort of interspersed throughout the monster section, if there are some of your more iconic undead, like your ghouls, ghost, vampires, they actually have this right up here, which again looks like it came straight from a scholar's journal. And it just adds, again, to the overall presentation, to the flavor presented. It just does an amazing job of presenting the material here in a way that's just really captivating. Lots of great, amazing flavor text, which, if you know me, that's one of my weaknesses when it comes to books like this, is just a great amount of awesome flavor text, just to help sort of, you know, expand, you know, the world a little bit when it comes to the undead. The Herexins here, I love these as well, and this is something that I definitely want to incorporate into a game. These are sort of your heretics that were cursed with undeath for betraying their faith. You've got the like the Faithless Priest, and then you got the Fallen Champion, which is awesome. Hollow Serpent, the Ichor Slinger. And there is the Lich. And again, there's some really cool variants here as well. So we've got like the Horde Lich, which has like all sort of like extra parts to it that it can use to like rejuvenate itself or to animate things. Again, just really cool concept. The Rune Carved Lich. The Mortic, that just looks awesome, like the goblin there. And here we got a section on mummies. Again, I love the extra write-up that they have with it here. Some of the different mummified creatures, mummified cats, the decrepit mummy, an ice mummy, which I think is actually really cool to have as well, because, you know, they're in the frozen waste. You can basically become preserved like a mummy as well as you can, you know, wrapped in linens in the desert. So really cool stuff there. And then we've got some, just a little bit of information on Set, the most reviled of the ancient Osirian pantheon, the encroaching desert, the invader, the sandstorm destroying everything in its path, as well as the dead who rise from their graves. Obviously, a very Egyptian influence with Osirian, which is, again, a section that of the Pathfinder world that I absolutely love. The Raw Nerve. So this is an undead that was created by a creature dying as a result of a massive jolt of electricity. So it could be like a spell, a dragon's breath weapon, or being hit by a lightning bolt. and basically just like the nerves and the brain sort of rip out of the body and animate on their own. It's again, there's some gnarly stuff in here. Revenants, I love Revenants as well. I think they can be a great storytelling device. We've got like the gunslinger version of it. Silent Stalker. The Risen Pet, so if you are a fan of Pet Cemetery, we've got some information for you here. Sort of an undead druid creatures. And then we got our skeletons. So we got some animal skeletons, wolf skeleton, skeletal soldier. We got the skeletal beetle, or the beetle carapace, skeletal mage. I really love that one as well. I've always, I shouldn't say I've always, but one of the adventures that I wrote a while ago, I don't think I actually got a chance to run it. But the idea was that the players were, believing that they were dealing with this lich. It was sort of this like undead mage that was terrorizing sort of this nearby region. And when they get there, it's actually not a lich. It's just this skeleton, someone that wanted to become a lich but failed, but they still reanimated with some semblance of their, abilities, barely intact kind of thing. I don't know. I thought it was kind of a cool concept to try to tackle. Tormented, the Unrisen, looks pretty gnarly there as well. Vampires, of course, you got to have vampires. So here we have the Jiangxi vampires, and I believe these are actually based off of Japanese folklore and mythology, which is kind of cool to see, again, some variant stuff, because vampires are already in the core bestiary. So it's not like, they need to focus on just the stock or sort of the more traditional or default versions that we might think of. So it's actually really cool to see, vampires inspired by other cultures. So again, some really cool stuff that we have here. And then we got the white. Again, I love whites. And I think Pathfinder does a better job of making them scary with their life drain or drain life ability versus other systems, more modern systems. Zombies, we got a zombie owlbear. What more do you need, right? That's just awesome. A zombie mammoth, although I think that would make a player in one of my current games that I'm running kind of upset, because he does have a mammoth that he has as like an animal companion. And we just got Lands of the Dead. So this is a little bit of campaign information, campaign setting information for some areas in the world of Galarian that are more or less, sort of centered around undead. So these could be areas of like magical energies that just reanimate, like fields of dead sort of thing, or cities or locations that revere the undead. This, again, it's just great to have, again, just a little bit of world building in here as well. Osirian, which, again, is very Egyptian based and is covered in other books as well. But, again, you just get a little bit of information to help sort of flesh out some of these areas, which is really, really cool. And then we've got Chapter 5, which is March of the Dead. Now, this is actually an adventure, so I'm not going to flip through any further here because I don't want to spoil anything as far as the adventure goes for anyone that maybe playing as a player. But it is awesome to see that there is actually a really decent adventure incorporated into this book as well. And it starts for third level characters. And yeah, I'm not going to go into it. Like I said, I'll keep it spoiler free here. But just the fact that they included an adventure in the supplement is something, again, that kind of goes above and beyond of what I was really expecting. So that was the sort of the flip through. And yeah, my thoughts of this book. It is, and I know I've said this before with other books in the Pathfinder 2nd edition library, it's been true for all of those, and it keeps evolving over time. But for now, this is my favorite supplement put out for all of Pathfinder 2nd edition. As far as like, I'm not incorporating like the core rule books or stuff like that into that, but just for supplements, additional content that you can use for your games, this is my favorite book. And I've done a video in the past going over another undead centric book for a different role-playing game system. And I mentioned in there, like, again, undead are some of my favorite creatures, and I was really disappointed by the way that that book sort of handled things. And I must say that this book, The Book of the Dead, in my opinion, is the best undead-centric resource book that I think has been put out for like the last, we'll just say 20 years or so. It's really, really amazing. It's fantastic. If you are a big fan of the undead, then this is an excellent addition to your collection. Now, this is sort of built around the theme of undead and undead creatures, undead player characters, which is something that not a lot of systems really try to incorporate very often. So it's really cool to see that as well. If you're not into undead or you're just not a big fan of them, then obviously this is going to be a bit of a tougher sell for you. But I think for the most part, for the average, RPG, Pathfinder 2nd Edition player, Game Master, what have you, this book is amazing, and I cannot recommend it enough. I definitely think you should check this out at your local game store or wherever you go for your RPG goods. So yeah, I don't think you're going to be disappointed. It's definitely worth your time, worth your while. The presentation is amazing. The flavor text is incredibly well written and captivating. And yeah, it's just overall a really excellent book. And it gives you an adventure that you can use to start off your brand new campaign if you want. Especially one that might center around more undead creatures. So awesome stuff overall. Definitely check it out. Once again, thank you to the good folks over at Paizo for sending this to me. I really do appreciate it. This was amazing. I can't wait to see what else you guys put out. Yeah, like I said, one of my favorite books for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and just one of my favorite RPG books over the last little while. Awesome stuff. So, let me know in the comments below, have you picked up Book of the Dead for Pathfinder 2nd Edition yet? If you have, are you a player? Are you a game master? Have you either played one of the undead archetypes to become an undead creature yourself in your current campaign? Or as a game master, have you opened that door for your players? Let me know any experience that you have with that. Or let's just talk about your favorite undead creatures, because, you know, this seems like an appropriate place to do that. Anyway, thank you guys again for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I will see you all next time. Until then, take care.